Today we're going to be reviewing this little guy. This is a 2018 13-inch MacBook Pro made by Apple. Before we talk about this though, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. And basically I am a UX designer and also a software engineer. So my life pretty much consists of going between Xcode and Sketch, and I build iPhone apps. So when I look at laptops and when I'm looking and when I'm reviewing this guy, I'm really going to be thinking about how is it a tool for my life, and how does it really enable my work to be better and all that good stuff. So yeah, before we dive into this, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here. So we're going to bring out the old faithful, and that is this guy. So this is a 2013 15-inch MacBook Pro. I bought it used, I think in 2014 or so. Save a lot of money that way, pro tip. But it's really been a great computer. I've used it for the last 4 years and really love it. But in the last 9 months or so, it was starting to show some of its age, some of its legs. In particular, there are a couple tasks that I was trying to do. Just hooking up to dual 4K displays as an example. The poor guy struggled a little bit just to render everything. Or what I mean is the frame rate and just the Mac OS and the UI on this old NVIDIA 750. You could do one 4K screen fine, but two was pretty tough. There are a couple other things, just wondering if something newer was faster and what's improved in 5 years. Also, I was starting to do some machine learning tasks, and the compute ability on the graphics card was lacking. But finally, really, I think, to be honest, what triggered it is, I just had a friend, and he had one of those little MacBooks, and MacBook Adorable, as some might call them. And it was so freaking adorable. It was small, 12 inches, and just so light. And I was like, oh, this thing is just, I remember when this was really thin and light, but now it just kind of feels heavy, kind of big. And so I was wondering if I could move to something smaller and lighter. Now I knew that a typical MacBook, would not do the trick, but I wondered if something else could. I knew I needed more horsepower than with the little, whatever that processor Intel makes on the MacBook. But I thought maybe a 13-inch MacBook Pro could be the way forward, or a newer 15-inch. So yeah, I was really looking for something small, light, and capable. Now, if you've been following the Apple MacBooks at all, 2016, 2017, I kind of avoided on purpose. That's why I stuck with that guy. Because 2016, 17, they have the new form factor, they are thinner and lighter, but a couple of issues prevented me from jumping on board right away. One, the most famous, right, the keyboard issue. There are a lot of issues with the keyboard. Some prefer the feel or don't like the feel. It's a thinner keystroke. The click is different. We'll talk about that in a second. For me, I tried it out. I didn't mind that, but just I knew that the dust issue and some of the reliability issues were concerning. In addition, all you have is Type USB on the ports, USB-C rather is what I mean. And I wasn't sure I wanted to embark upon USB-C hell and dongle life. So I held off. But then in 2018 something changed, and two things. One, they finally increased the core count on all the MacBooks. That was the biggest thing. Because when I looked at the performance and I looked at the specs between what my old machine had to offer and what the newer machines had to offer, there wasn't much of a difference. But once you finally upgraded the core count, which means you could get a quad core in a 13-inch, and if you move to a 15-inch, you could actually get a hexa-core. Well, I was intrigued. In addition, they also have the membrane on the keyboards, which is supposed to help with that. We'll find out in a second. And anyway, it was enough to get me interested. So I thought about 15-inch or 13-inch. I really wanted to try the 13 because I wanted to see how thin and light it was, and and just see if I would like that. So here it is, bought it brand new, and it is really thin and light. I'll start off by saying I love the size of it. It just feels good. It's a full 1.5 pounds lighter than this one. I believe this is 4.5 pounds, and this is 3 pounds. So the difference is significant. And according to the specs and according to the benchmarks, this should be faster than the old one in every way. So it now has a quad core, and this is a quad core. So they're both quad core with 8 threads. They call it i5, it's at 2.3 gigahertz. This one was the upgraded model, so it has a 2.6 gigahertz i7. But this is, of course, the newer, I believe, what is this, Kaby Lake? Kaby Lake, yeah, processor. And then the old one is a Haswell, which is pre-Skylake. So there's an architecture improvement, and there should be performance improvements here. Both of them, I got a 512 gig solid state drive, because that's the space that I really need. And but there are some differences again. So the old one is PCI Express solid state still, but the new one has that, plus it uses the NVMe communication protocol, which is a more modern, faster protocol. I believe Apple started using that in 2016. So that's an improvement over this one, and just in general, the solid state drive in here is much faster. I believe maybe 1,000 megabits read-write faster. I think it's around 2,600, and this is maybe 1,600. And we'll look at benchmarks in a second. So I was like, okay, it's lighter, more compact. The processor is probably comparable, maybe slightly faster on here. Some benchmarks I found said this one was a little faster, and solid state's faster. The interesting thing is, the default configuration on this is 8 gigabytes of RAM. If you want 16, here's what this has, you have to pay more, of course. And so I thought to myself, well, do I really need to pay? Anyway, because I was looking, there are a couple deals and such, and so getting the 16 gigs of RAM was actually a significant price increase. And I thought, well, Apple's pretty good at memory management. Do I really need that much RAM? Let's give this one a shot. In addition, it loses a dedicated video card. But I said to myself, well, I don't know if I'm really going to be doing that much machine learning stuff, and how bad could Intel's integrated graphics be? I mean, they got to be fine, right? It's better than Intel in here. It's probably ironically comparable, maybe slightly better than the old NVIDIA chip in here. So, what could go wrong? Well, we'll talk about that. Now, one more thing that's kind of interesting to know about the new one is, of course, the touch bar. Now going into it, I honestly didn't really care about the touch bar. I was fine without it. But in order to get the specs I needed, aka the new quad-core chips, you have to get the 13-inch with touch bar. The non-touch bar still uses dual-core, an older processor. But I will say, so just going to the lock screen, the first thing you'll notice is there's no password indicator because it has Touch ID. And so you can use that and just sign in rather than, having to type in my password like an animal. Anyway, I'll talk more about that in a second. I will say up front that I was surprised. I actually enjoy the touch bar more than I thought I would. It's by no means a game changer. I don't know that it's worth the price increase that went across all the MacBooks. But it is pretty cool. It is useful. In particular, there's some cool integrations with Sketch and just autofill on the web and things like that. So anyway, let's look at benchmarks and let's see how these two perform on paper, and then I'm going to talk to you about my experiences. Alright, so we're going to run Geekbench on both these machines. I do have them, oh hello there, hi, yeah. I do have them both plugged in, Just make sure that's all fair. I just want to see their maximum performance, not how they handle a battery. And yeah, MagSafe, may rest in peace. Although it is cool, you know, with the Type-C, you can plug it in on either side, which is sometimes nice. So let's run this and see what we get. Alright, so as you can see, it's pretty close, actually. Like single core, multi-thread core, it's really close. But the newer one, even in a smaller package, is a little bit faster. So 4609 versus 4018, and then a multi-thread of 1720 versus 1550. Yeah. So kind of what we expected. Basically, you have similar, slightly better performance in this in a much smaller and lighter package. Okay, well that's interesting. Obviously we have a score for the new one. On the old one it has 0. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's too old and it can't do some of the compute tasks that the benchmark asked it to do. I'm not really sure. I'll investigate. Okay, so yeah, the old NVIDIA card wasn't able to do one of the benchmarks, the depth of field test. So I got a 0. But otherwise, though, actually across the board, the integrated graphics in Intel is better. The bars don't show, but when you look at the numbers, you look at the raw output, it looks like time did its work, and the integrated graphics is actually better than the older NVIDIA 750. So there's no need really to test the old Intel Iris. Obviously we know that won't go well. Okay, and now we'll do the disk speed test to see what's changed in a solid state drive in 5 years. Well, actually quite a bit. The new one's a lot faster, more than I thought. So read of 2600, which is what I kind of remembered, and then write of 1700 sounds about right. I didn't realize the old one was a little bit slower. I thought it could hit 1000 on the reads, but looks like 700 is best it could do, and 540 on the writes. And if you scroll down on sort of all their video, this would help. What's going on? Huh. Interesting, I can't move it any higher. And apparently the window can't be resized. So, I don't know, that's weird. But obviously no one can do all the things, 4K at 60 frames, whatever. You actually see that the old one would struggle on certain video processes at 4K 60 FPS.